Right now, as you're watching this, Warren Buffett is sitting on more than $300 billion in cash, not invested, not working, not buying anything, just sitting there. The most successful investor in the history of the world, a man whose entire life is about putting money to work, has piled up a mountain of cash so enormous it's hard to even picture, and he's doing almost nothing with it. And people are losing their minds over it. The headlines ask if he's lost his edge. The experts say cash is trash, that money sitting still is money dying, that every day those billions aren't invested is a day of opportunity thrown in the garbage. Younger investors look at him and shrug. The old man's too cautious, too scared, too out of touch with a world that moves faster than he does. And on the surface, they have a point. $300 billion doing nothing while markets climb and everyone else gets richer? That sounds like fear. It sounds like a man who's run out of ideas. But here's what they're all missing. What looks like caution isn't caution at all. What looks like an old man being timid is one of the most aggressive, calculated moves in all of finance. That mountain of cash isn't money sitting still, it's a weapon. Loaded, aimed, waiting. And what Buffett is waiting for, the thing that pile of cash is quietly getting ready for, is going to destroy a lot of the very people laughing at him right now. Because Buffett understands something almost nobody else has the stomach to act on. He said it himself, and it's one of the truest things ever said about money. Cash is like oxygen. You don't think about it when you have plenty of it. It's invisible, boring, easy to ignore. But the moment you run out, the moment the market turns and suddenly nobody has any, it becomes the only thing that matters in the entire world. Cash is oxygen, and oxygen matters most when everyone else is drowning. Hold on to that, because it's the whole story. Now, to understand why a man would deliberately hold hundreds of billions of dollars in cash, why he'd endure the mockery, the impatience, the years of looking like he's asleep at the wheel, you have to understand what he's actually doing. Because he's not being passive. This is not a man who doesn't know what to do. This is a man who knows exactly what to do, and has made the single hardest decision in all of investing, the decision to do nothing. Think about how strange that is. We're taught our whole lives that success means action, movement, hustle, doing something, anything, all the time. Sitting still feels like failure. It feels lazy. It feels like you're falling behind while everyone else races ahead. And that feeling, that deep, gnawing itch to act, is exactly what destroys most investors. They can't sit still. They can't hold cash. The money burns a hole in their pocket and they throw it at something, anything, just to feel like they're doing their job. Buffett does the opposite, and he does it on purpose. He once put it perfectly. The trick, he said, is that when there's nothing to do, you do nothing. Read that again, because it sounds simple and it is almost impossible. When there's nothing worth buying, when nothing is cheap, when every good opportunity has already been chased sky high by an excited crowd, most people buy anyway. They can't help it. Buffett just waits. He lets the cash pile up. He lets it grow into a mountain, and he watches, patiently. For years, if that's what it takes, because he knows what almost everyone forgets in good times. The good times don't last. They never have. Markets rise, and everyone forgets that gravity exists, and then, without warning, everything falls. And when it falls, when panic sets in, and people are desperate and terrified and selling everything they own at any price just to get out, that's the moment. That's the fat pitch. That's when the great opportunities of a lifetime go on sale at prices that will never come again. And the only people who can grab them are the ones who kept their oxygen, the ones who waited, the ones with cash. That's the game he's playing. It's not caution, it's not fear, it's the most disciplined form of aggression there is. The willingness to sit still, absorb the mockery, and wait for the one moment when being the only person in the room with money makes you unstoppable. So subscribe, because I'm going to show you exactly how this works, the psychology behind it, the history that proves it, and the one thing Buffett understands about waiting that almost no one else can do. And I promise you'll never look at doing nothing the same way again. Because to understand why he waits, you first have to understand what terrifies every single person who can't. So let's talk about the thing that terrifies everyone who can't wait. Because it's not really about money. It's about a feeling. One so powerful, so deeply wired into us, that fighting it feels almost unnatural. And once you see it clearly, you'll understand why holding cash is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Imagine it. You've got money in your account, real money, just sitting there. And every single day you watch the market go up. Other people are buying. Other people are winning. Your friend brags about the stock that doubled. Your coworker won't shut up about the trade that made him a fortune. Everywhere you look, everyone is doing something and getting rich doing it. And you're just holding, sitting on your hands, watching. How long could you last? Because I'll tell you the truth, most people can't last a week. That money in the account doesn't feel like safety, it feels like an accusation. It feels like you're falling behind, like you're the only fool at the party still standing by the wall while everyone else is dancing. And that pressure builds and builds until one day you crack. You throw the money in, not because you found something great, but because you couldn't stand doing nothing for one more second. The itch won. And the moment you gave in to that itch, you handed control of your money over to your own impatience. That's the enemy. That's what Buffett is fighting every single day that his cash pile grows. It's not the market, it's this. The screaming, relentless, almost physical need to act. And here's why it's so brutal. Because the pressure doesn't come from inside you alone. It comes from everyone. The entire world is built to make you feel like a failure for sitting still. Turn on any financial channel and it's a wall of noise. Buy this, sell that, move, react, do something now or you'll miss out. Nobody ever goes on television and says the smartest thing you can do today is nothing. That doesn't get clicks, that doesn't sell. So the message you hear all day, every day, from every direction is the exact opposite of what actually makes people rich. Move, act, now. And then there's the crowd, because nothing breaks a person's discipline faster than watching everyone around them win. When the whole world is buying and getting richer by the week, sitting on cash doesn't feel wise. It feels stupid. It feels like you're being left behind by people who are clearly smarter than you. And the longer it goes on, the more unbearable it gets. A month of watching others win you can handle. A year, maybe. But what about 3 years? What about watching the crowd celebrate over and over while you hold your cash and get called a dinosaur? That's the pressure that breaks almost everyone, because eventually the doubt creeps in. Eventually you start to wonder if maybe you're the one who's wrong. Maybe this time really is different. Maybe the party never ends. That's the exact moment the trap closes. Because the crowd is loudest, the pressure is heaviest, and the temptation to finally jump in is strongest right at the top, right before the fall. The feeling that it's safe to buy is at its absolute peak precisely when it's most dangerous. And the feeling that it's foolish to hold cash is strongest right before cash becomes the most valuable thing on earth. Buffett knows this. He's lived through it, not once, but many times across decades. He's been mocked in every single bubble. He's been called finished, out of touch, over the hill, in market after market after market. And every time, he did the same maddening, boring, impossible thing. He held. He absorbed the ridicule. He let the crowd celebrate without him. He sat on his oxygen while everyone else spent theirs, and he waited for the moment they'd all forgotten was coming. But make no mistake, that patience has a price, and it's a steeper price than most people realize. Because waiting doesn't just test your discipline, it costs you, visibly, publicly, in front of everyone. Every year Buffett sits on cash during a boom is a year his returns look worse than the reckless people around him. Every year is a year of headlines questioning him, of doubters piling on, of watching gamblers post gains he refused to chase. The cost of waiting isn't invisible. It's a bill that comes due over and over in reputation and in nerve, and you have to be willing to pay it again and again with no guarantee of exactly when the payoff comes. There's a price people pay for not being able to simply sit still, and there's a very different, very lonely price paid by the rare few who can. And to understand why Buffett is willing to pay that second price, why he'll endure years of looking wrong, you have to understand what cash actually is to him, because it's nothing like what it is to everyone else. So what is cash really to a man like Warren Buffett? Because it's not what it is to you and me. To most people, cash sitting in an account is dead money. It's money that isn't growing, isn't earning, isn't doing its job. It feels like a failure of imagination, like you couldn't think of anything better to do with it. That's how the whole world is trained to see it. Money should be working. Money standing still is money wasted. Buffett sees something completely different. To him, that pile of cash isn't dead at all. It's the most alive thing he owns. Because cash isn't the absence of a decision, it's the freedom to make the best one later. It's not money doing nothing, it's money keeping every single option open, ready to move the instant the right moment arrives. Think about what that actually means. When you're fully invested, when every dollar you have is already tied up in something, you have no power. You can't act. If the deal of a lifetime walks through the door tomorrow, you can only watch it walk right back out because you've got nothing to buy it with. You're stuck. But the man holding cash, he can do anything. He can wait and wait and wait, and then the moment the perfect opportunity appears, he strikes with the full force of everything he's saved. Cash is the price of readiness. It's the option to say yes when everyone else is forced to say no. And that's the part almost nobody understands. Holding cash isn't a bet on nothing. It's a bet on everything. It's Buffett saying, I don't know exactly when the great opportunity will come, but I know it will come. It always does. And when it does, I intend to be the one person in the room who can actually seize it. There's a freedom in that most people never taste. Because the person who's always fully invested is, in a strange way, a prisoner. Prisoner of the market, prisoner of the moment, prisoner of whatever they already own. But the person with a mountain of cash is free. Free to wait, free to ignore the noise, free to say no to 1,000 mediocre chances because he's saving himself for the one that's extraordinary. That freedom, the freedom to do nothing until the right thing appears, is, quietly, one of the greatest advantages in all of finance. And almost no one has the discipline to hold on to it. But here's the thing you need to understand, and this is the piece that changes everything. Waiting well is not a personality trait. It's not that Buffett was simply born patient, calm, immune to the itch that drives everyone else insane. That's the comfortable lie people tell themselves. Oh, he's just built different. I could never do that. No. Waiting is a skill. It's a discipline. It's something learned, practiced, and refined over a lifetime, and Buffett learned it, in part, from the strangest, most unexpected place imaginable. Not from another investor, not from an economist, not from anyone in the world of money at all. He learned it from a man who stood alone, holding a bat, and understood something about waiting that made him the greatest at what he did. And that turned out to apply to money more perfectly than anything Wall Street ever taught. Because this man had a rule, a single, quiet rule that flew in the face of everything his own world told him to do. Everyone around him was told to be aggressive, to swing, to attack every chance that came. And he refused. He looked at the game completely differently. He divided the whole thing into tiny zones, and he understood exactly which ones he could win in, and which ones would beat him every time. And here's what made him a legend. He was willing to stand there doing absolutely nothing, letting chance after chance sail right past him while the crowd screamed at him to swing, because he was waiting. Waiting for the one that came right into his zone, the one he couldn't miss. He knew a secret that Buffett would build an entire fortune on, that you don't get punished for the good opportunities you let pass by. You only get punished for the bad ones you chase. That the discipline to wait, to let 1,000 tempting but wrong chances go, refusing the swing until the perfect one arrives, isn't weakness at all. It's the whole game. It's everything. And Buffett took that lesson, that quiet rule from a man holding a bat, and he built it into the foundation of how he thinks about money. He decided he would never swing at a bad pitch, no matter how loud the crowd got, no matter how long he had to stand there and wait. But to really understand this, to see exactly how a rule from a completely different world became the secret behind $300 billion in cash, you have to meet the man who taught it. Because he never swung at a bad pitch in his life, and what he understood about waiting is the exact thing Buffett is doing right now. His name was Ted Williams, and he wasn't an investor. He wasn't a banker or an economist or anyone who ever thought about the stock market for a single second in his life. Ted Williams was a baseball player, arguably the greatest pure hitter who ever lived. And the lesson he left behind became one of the deepest secrets of how Warren Buffett thinks about money. Here's what Williams did that nobody else dared to do. He took the strike zone, the area where a pitch can be thrown, and in his mind, he broke it into 77 tiny squares, each one the size of a baseball. And then he studied himself. He learned exactly which of those squares he could hit brilliantly and which ones would beat him almost every time. The ones dead center, waist high, those were his. He could crush those. But the ones down low, on the far corners, at the edges of the zone, those were poison. If he swung at those, he'd fail, over and over. So he made a rule. He would only swing at pitches in his best squares, only the perfect ones. And for everything else, every pitch that wasn't quite right, no matter how tempting, no matter how much the crowd wanted him to swing, he would simply let it go. He would stand there and watch it fly right past. He was willing to wait and do nothing at all until the pitch he wanted came into the exact spot he wanted it. And then, only then, he swung with everything he had. That was his genius. Not that he could hit, plenty of people could hit. His genius was in what he refused to swing at. In the discipline to let good enough go, again and again, saving himself for great. Now think about what Buffett saw in that. Because in investing, there's a rule Williams didn't have, a rule that makes waiting even more powerful. In baseball, if you let too many pitches go by, eventually you're called out. There's a penalty for waiting too long. But in investing, there is no penalty. None. You can stand at the plate forever. You can let 1,000 opportunities sail past, 1,000 stocks, 1,000 deals, 1,000 tempting chances, and nobody calls you out. Nobody forces you to swing. You can wait as long as you want, holding your bat, holding your cash, until the one perfect pitch finally floats right into the center of your zone. And the only mistake you can make is swinging at a bad one. That's the whole thing. That's Buffett's entire philosophy in a single image. The market is throwing pitches at you every single day, thousands of them, endlessly, forever. Most of them are bad, overpriced, wrong, outside your zone, and the crowd is screaming at you to swing at every one because doing nothing feels like failure. But the disciplined investor knows the truth Ted Williams knew standing at that plate. You wait, you let them go, you do nothing for as long as it takes, and you save every ounce of your power for the fat pitch, the one you cannot miss. And this is exactly why the cash matters. Because when that fat pitch finally comes, you'd better have something to swing with. You'd better have kept your oxygen. Because cash is like oxygen. You don't notice it when everyone has plenty, but the moment the market crashes and the panic sets in and nobody has any left, it becomes the only thing that matters in the world. Cash is oxygen. And oxygen matters most when everyone else is drowning. So picture Buffett, all these years, standing at the plate. The crowd is jeering. The experts are calling him washed up. Pitch after pitch comes flying by. Bubbles, manias, hot stocks doubling overnight, and he lets them all go. He doesn't swing. He just holds his bat, holds his cash, and waits. For years. Watching. Because he isn't looking for a good pitch. He's waiting for the perfect one. The moment when the market breaks. When everyone else has spent all their oxygen chasing bad pitches, when the greatest company in the world suddenly goes on sale for pennies because the crowd is too terrified to buy. That's the moment he's built his entire life around. That's what $300 billion is for. Not to sit forever, to wait, with total discipline, total patience, total willingness to look like a fool, for the single swing that changes everything. And here's the thing about that swing. When it comes, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive on a calendar. It comes suddenly, violently, in the middle of chaos, when the whole world is falling apart and everyone is panicking and running for the exits. It comes on a weekend when the financial system itself is cracking, and the phones won't stop ringing, and the people who yesterday had all the money suddenly have none. And on one such weekend, the worst weekend in a generation, the fat pitch Buffett had been waiting years for came flying right into the center of his zone. The year was 2008, and the financial world was ending, not slowing down, not correcting, ending. Banks that had stood for 100 years were collapsing in a matter of days. Lehman Brothers, a giant, an institution, a name everyone thought was untouchable, simply died over a single weekend. And then the panic spread like fire. Nobody trusted anybody. Nobody knew who was next. The most powerful companies on earth, the ones that had spent years swinging at every pitch, chasing every deal, spending every dollar they had, suddenly found themselves gasping, out of oxygen, drowning. And the phone started ringing at Warren Buffett's office. Because here's what happens in a crisis that nobody tells you. When everything falls apart, when credit freezes and fear takes over, the giants who were fully invested, who had no cash, who'd swung at everything, they don't come out swinging. They come begging. They come looking for the one person left in the room who still has money. And in 2008, when the smartest, richest companies in the world were on their knees, there was Warren Buffett, sitting on a mountain of cash, calm, patient, loaded. The years of waiting, the years of mockery, the years of standing at the plate letting bad pitches sail past, all of it had led to exactly this moment. And the fat pitch came flying right into the center of his zone. Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful investment banks on the planet, needed money, and needed it fast, so they came to Buffett. And because he had cash when nobody else did, because he was the only one in the room who could actually say yes, he didn't take their terms. He set his own. He put in billions, and he got a deal so favorable it was almost absurd. He got a guaranteed return of 10% a year, every year, just for handing over the money. 10% guaranteed from Goldman Sachs, a company that months earlier would never have given him the time of day. And on top of that, the right to buy their stock cheap later. He didn't just help them, he dictated the terms of their rescue. Then came General Electric, at the time one of the largest companies in the entire world. Same story. They were desperate. They needed cash. And they came to the man who had it. And again, Buffett set the price. Billions in, 10% guaranteed, favorable terms on their stock. Deal after deal, the giants lined up at his door, and one after another he wrote checks on his terms. Because when you're the only one holding oxygen while everyone else is drowning, you don't ask what things cost. You decide. Do you understand what actually happened here? For years, Buffett looked like a fool. For years, people said his caution was cowardice, that his cash was dead money, that he'd lost his edge and gotten too old to play. And in the span of a single crisis, that dead money became the most powerful force in all of finance. That cowardice became the discipline that let him buy the greatest companies on earth at fire sale prices, on terms he alone could name. Everyone who mocked him for holding cash, every single one of them, was now either drowning, begging, or watching from the sidelines while he made the deals of a lifetime. That is the payoff for waiting. That is what all those lonely, boring, ridiculed years were for. Not a good return. A once-in-a-decade back-up-the-truck, name-your-own-terms fortune available only to the one person disciplined enough to have kept his oxygen when everyone else spent theirs. And this is the part I need you to really sit with because it's the whole point. Buffett didn't get rich in 2008 because he was smarter than everyone in the room during the crisis. He got rich because of what he did in all the years before it, the years of nothing. The waiting was the work. The discipline to hold cash through the boom, to endure the mockery, to sit still while the crowd celebrated. That boring, invisible patience was what made the explosive payoff possible. The swing gets all the glory, but the swing was nothing without the years of not swinging that came first. Which brings us to you. Because right now, reading this, you probably think the lesson here is simple. Be patient, hold cash, wait for the crash. And that sounds easy. It sounds obvious. But there is a mistake, a specific, quiet, almost invisible mistake that you are almost certainly making right now with this exact idea. A mistake that turns Buffett's greatest strength into a trap that will cost you everything. And almost nobody sees it coming. Here's the mistake. And it's so seductive that almost everyone who hears Buffett's story falls straight into it. You hear, hold cash and wait for the crash, and something in your brain quietly rewrites it into something else. It becomes, do nothing, sit on the sidelines, and wait for the perfect moment to get in. And that tiny, innocent-sounding shift is the trap that will quietly ruin you. Because you are not Warren Buffett. And waiting, for you, means something completely different than it means for him. When Buffett waits, he is not sitting on the sidelines doing nothing. That's the illusion. Behind that pile of cash is a machine. Dozens of the world's greatest businesses that he already owns, throwing off billions of dollars every single year. His waiting is funded. His patience pays him. While he stands at the plate letting bad pitches go, he is being showered in cash the entire time by companies he bought decades ago. His doing nothing is built on a mountain of something. That's the part nobody tells you. But when you decide to wait for the crash, what does it actually look like? You pull your money out, you sit in cash, and then you wait, and nothing happens. The market doesn't crash. It goes up, and up. For a year, for 2 years, for 5 years. And every day you're not being paid to wait. You're bleeding. You're missing gains, watching the thing climb without you, growing more bitter and more certain that the crash is coming any day now. It has to. It's overdue. And when the crash finally does come, if it comes, you won't buy. You'll be too terrified. Because the same fear that made you sit out will scream even louder when the world is actually falling apart. That's the trap. Waiting for the perfect moment isn't discipline. For most people, it's just fear wearing a costume that looks like patience. Do you see the difference? Buffett isn't timing the market. He's not sitting there trying to guess the exact day it all falls apart. He's doing something far simpler and far harder. He owns great things, he holds cash on top of them, and he stays ready. He's not predicting the storm. He's just the only one who kept an umbrella, so when it rains, he's dry. The waiting isn't the strategy, the readiness is. And that's the real lesson, the one that's so easy to miss underneath the flashy story about billions of dollars. It was never about hoarding cash and refusing to invest. It was never about sitting out, paralyzed, waiting for a crash that may never come the way you imagine it. It was about building something that pays you while you wait, keeping a reserve of freedom on top of it and having the discipline, the rare, almost superhuman discipline, to not swing at bad pitches while everyone around you swings at everything. Because here's the truth that ties all of it together. The hardest thing in investing, in business, in almost anything that matters is not action. Action is easy. Action feels good. Everyone can act. The hardest thing in the world is the disciplined refusal to act when acting is wrong, to sit still while the crowd runs, to hold when everyone screams by, to wait with total patience for the one pitch you can crush, and to let 1,000 others go by without flinching. That's what $300 billion in cash really is. It's not fear. It's not indecision. It's not a man who ran out of ideas. It's the loudest possible statement of confidence. A man saying with every fiber of his being that he would rather do nothing perfectly than do something poorly. That he trusts his discipline more than he fears the crowd. That he has seen this movie before, many times, and he knows exactly how it ends. So the next time you feel that itch, that unbearable pressure to do something, anything, just to feel like you're not falling behind, I want you to remember the man at the plate. Remember that the greatest fortune of the modern age wasn't built on the swings. It was built on all the pitches he let go by, on the patience to wait, on the courage to look like a fool, on the discipline to hold his oxygen while everyone else drowned. Because in the end, the single greatest skill, the one that separates the people who win from the people who blow up, comes down to one quiet, brutal, almost impossible question. And it's the question Buffett has been answering correctly for 60 years. Here's the question. The one Buffett has answered correctly for 60 years, while almost everyone around him got it wrong. Not what should I buy? Not when will the market crash? Not, how do I make more, faster? The question underneath all of it, the one that quietly decides who wins and who blows up, is this: can I do nothing when doing nothing is the right thing to do? That's it. That's the whole game. Because everything else, the analysis, the timing, the clever moves, all of it collapses if you can't answer that one question with a yes. And here's the brutal part. Almost nobody can. We are built to act. We are wired to swing. The pressure to do something, to feel busy, to prove we're not falling behind, it's relentless, and it destroys more fortunes than any crash ever has. People don't blow up because they missed the perfect moment. They blow up because they couldn't stand to wait for it. They swung at bad pitch after bad pitch, just to feel the swing. And Buffett, sitting on his $300 billion in cash, is doing the single hardest thing in all of finance. He is answering that question with a yes, every single day, while the crowd screams, while the experts mock him, while the market climbs without him and the whole world insists he's lost his touch. He just stands there, calm, holding his bat, holding his oxygen, and he waits. Because he understands the thing you now understand too. Cash is oxygen. You don't notice it when everyone has plenty. It feels useless, wasteful, like money that forgot its job. But the moment the market breaks, the moment the panic hits and the giants start drowning and the phones start ringing off the hook, in that moment, oxygen becomes the only thing on earth that matters. And the person who kept theirs, quietly, patiently, while everyone laughed, that person doesn't just survive. That person owns the future, on terms no one else can touch. So that mountain of cash was never fear. It was never a man out of ideas or an old man who lost his nerve. It was the most confident statement in the entire world of money. It was a man who learned from someone standing alone at a plate with a bat that you never swing at a bad pitch, no matter how loud the crowd gets. It was a man who understood that the waiting is the work, that the boring years of nothing are exactly what make the explosive moment possible, that discipline is the rarest and most valuable asset there is. And now you understand it too. So the next time you feel that itch, that unbearable urge to do something, anything, just to feel like you're in the game, stop. Remember the man at the plate. Remember that the greatest fortune of our age was built not on the swings, but on the 1,000 pitches he let sail right by. Remember that patience isn't weakness. Doing nothing isn't losing. Sometimes the strongest, boldest, most powerful move in the entire world is to stand perfectly still, hold your oxygen, and wait for the one pitch you cannot miss. That's the secret. That's the whole thing. And it was hiding in plain sight the entire time. If this changed the way you see money, even a little, then do one thing for me before you go. Subscribe. Because we take the hidden machinery behind the world's most powerful people and the biggest events in history, and we break it wide open, one story at a time. The next one is already waiting, and you don't want to let it sail by.